Welcome to the Science of Ageless Living. I'm your host, Dr. Ethan Hausman-Marquis, a medical scientist specializing in longevity and regenerative medicine. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest questions in human biology. Why do we age? And more importantly, what can we actually do about it? Let's start with a statement that might surprise you. Aging isn't caused by time. It's caused by accumulated molecular and cellular damage and, critically, the gradual failure of our bodies to repair that damage effectively. Think about it. We don't die because our cells suddenly stop working one day. No, we die because, over decades, our cells slowly lose fidelity. The precision, the accuracy, the robustness that defined them in youth starts to erode. Information gets corrupted. Energy systems falter. Repair mechanisms become overwhelmed or dysfunctional. But here's where it gets exciting. Longevity medicine isn't about accepting this decline. It's about intervening early and strategically to preserve three core pillars: accurate biological information, robust cellular energy, effective repair capacity. In this episode, we're going deep, but accessibly, into the mechanisms driving aging. We'll cover how DNA damage accumulates and why it matters, the role of epigenetics, why identical twins can end up aging very differently, why mitochondria are arguably the true biological clock, the dramatic age-related decline in NAD+ and its downstream consequences, and finally, why peptides are emerging as one of the most precise tools we have to restore youthful cellular behavior. This isn't speculation. This is grounded in decades of molecular biology, systems biology, and emerging clinical data. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear framework for understanding aging as a treatable process, not an inevitable fate. Let's dive in. To understand why we age, let's start with the most basic rule of how life works, something scientists call the central dogma of molecular biology. Think of it like this. Every cell in your body is a tiny factory that follows a master recipe book. That recipe book is your DNA, a 3 billion letter instruction manual that tells the factory exactly how to build and run everything in your body. In a young, healthy cell, this process is like a brand new kitchen with a spotless cookbook, a talented chef, and perfect tools. DNA gets copied into a temporary shopping list. That's RNA. The shopping list tells the kitchen crew how to assemble the final dishes. Those dishes are proteins, and proteins are what actually do all the work. Motor C. Building tissues, sending signals, burning energy, repairing damage. When you're young, the whole operation runs smoothly and precisely. But aging happens when this factory starts making mistakes. Not because the cookbook itself is bad, but because the process of reading and following it gets sloppy over time. There are three big ways this breakdown happens. Let me explain each with a simple analogy. First, the cookbook itself gets damaged. Every day, your cells take tens of thousands of little hits to the DNA, like coffee spills, torn pages, or ink smudges on the recipes. These come from normal breathing and energy production, reactive oxygen species, sunlight, pollution, even the food you eat. When you're young, the factory has an amazing cleanup and repair crew. Base excision repair fixes small smudges. Nucleotide excision repair cuts out and replaces bigger damaged sections, and systems like non-homologous end-joining glue broken pages back together. Most spills get wiped up perfectly, but no repair crew is 100% perfect. Over decades, a few stains and tears stick around and build up. The cookbook still has all the right recipes, but some pages are harder to read. Second, the instructions on how to use the cookbook start glitching. This is called epigenetic regulation degrading. Imagine the cookbook has colored sticky tabs and highlights that say, use this recipe a lot for muscle, keep this one turned off in skin cells, or only open this chapter during stress. Those tabs and highlights are your epigenetics, the control layer on top of DNA. Think of DNA as the hardware, the physical book, and epigenetics as the software, the tabs, notes, and organization system. With age, those sticky tabs fall off, highlights fade, pages get bookmarked wrong. Suddenly, the chef starts using the wrong recipes or forgetting important ones entirely. Third, the kitchen crew starts messing up even when the recipe is clear. This is loss of proteostasis and transcriptional noise. Even with a readable cookbook and correct tabs, the actual cooking goes wrong. Some chefs make way too much of one dish, others make almost none. That's transcriptional noise. And the quality control team gets tired. Proteins, the finished dishes, don't fold into the right shape. They clump together like overcooked eggs sticking to the pan, and the cleanup crew can't keep up. Those clumps are protein aggregates, the same kind that build up dramatically in Alzheimer's amyloid plaques, Parkinson's alpha-synuclein, or ALS TDP43. But in smaller amounts, they happen in all of us as we age. Here's the part that always blows people's minds. When scientists compare young skin to old skin or young muscle to old muscle, the DNA letters are the actual recipes in the cookbook are virtually identical. The book is the same. What's completely different is how the recipes are being used. Thousands of dishes that should be on the menu are missing. Others that should never be served are coming out of the kitchen anyway. This is why simply editing the DNA sequence, like with CRISPR, the gene editing tool you hear about, isn't the main fix for normal aging. We don't need a new cookbook. We need to clean up the damaged pages, put the sticky tabs back in the right places, and get the kitchen crew working with young precision again. That's exactly what cutting-edge longevity approaches target: restoring epigenetic control, boosting proteostasis and protein quality control, and helping cells read and follow their own perfect instructions accurately again, just like they did when you were younger. And that brings us perfectly to our next segment, where we'll zoom in on epigenetics and explain why identical twins, who start with the exact same cookbook, can end up aging so differently. Let's zoom in on epigenetics, because this is one of the most misunderstood and honestly, one of the most exciting and actionable pieces of the aging puzzle. Remember how we said DNA is like a master cookbook full of every possible recipe your body could ever need? Epigenetics is a system of colored sticky tabs, highlights, bookmarks, and notes that tells the chef which recipes to use a lot, which ones to ignore completely, and which ones to pull out only in special situations. Without those tabs and notes, the chef would be totally lost even with a perfect cookbook. Epigenetics controls whether genes are accessible or hidden through three main mechanisms. Think of them as different ways to organize and label the cookbook. 1. DNA methylation. This is like putting a do not use sticker directly on certain recipes, specifically on cytosine bases in the DNA. Adding methyl groups usually silences the genes nearby, turns them off. E. Histone modifications. DNA doesn't float around loose. It's tightly wrapped around proteins called histones, like thread on spools. Chemical tags on those spools, acetyl groups, methyl groups, etc., decide whether the DNA is wound tight, genes hidden and silent, or loosened up genes, readable and active. 1. Chromatin remodeling. This is the physical rearranging of those spools, moving them closer together or farther apart, so the cookbook pages are either crammed, shut, or opened wide for easy reading by the cell's transcriptional machinery. When you're young, all these stickers, highlights, and spool arrangements are neat, precise, and stable. Every cell type has exactly the right setup for its job. Skin cells use skin recipes, brain cells use brain recipes. But as we age, these marks start to drift, stickers fall off, highlights fade or get scribbled in the wrong places, spools get tangled. Scientists call this epigenetic drift. One of the coolest ways we measure this drift is with epigenetic clocks. The first big one was the Horvath clock, created by researcher Steve Horvath back in 2013. Newer versions include PhenoAge and GrimAge. These clocks look at hundreds of specific methylation sites, those do not use stickers across your entire genome, and calculate your biological age. They're shockingly accurate. GrimAge, for example, predicts how many years you have left and your risk of dying better than your actual birthday age, whether you smoke or most standard blood tests. The perfect real-world example is identical twins. They're born with the exact same DNA cookbook and almost identical sticky tab systems. As kids, their epigenetic patterns are nearly indistinguishable. But by adulthood, especially middle age and beyond, those patterns can diverge dramatically based on how each twin lived. The twin with more epigenetic drift, more messed up tabs and highlights, usually looks older, has lower energy, more health issues, and higher disease risk. What causes this drift? Everyday lifestyle and environment. Chronic stress pumps out cortisol, which knocks methylation stickers out of place. Ongoing low-grade inflammation sends signals that scribble the wrong tags on histones. Poor nutrition leaves you short on raw materials. Methyl donors like folate, B12, choline, or betaine needed to keep the stickers fresh and accurate. Toxins from pollution, smoking, alcohol, processed foods directly damage the DNA or the histone spools. Here's the part that should get everyone excited. Unlike DNA sequence changes, epigenetic marks are, to a large degree, reversible. We're already seeing this in human studies. Simple lifestyle upgrades, certain medications, metformin in some cases, NAD plus precursors like NMN, and targeted peptide protocols have all been shown to move epigenetic clocks backward, sometimes by several years, without touching the underlying DNA letters at all. You're essentially restoring the organization system so the chef can once again read and follow the original recipes properly. That's why many researchers now say aging is, in many ways, an epigenetic disease, long before it becomes a permanent genetic one. Fix the sticky tabs and highlights, and you can bring the whole kitchen back toward youthful performance, even with the same old cookbook you were born with. Next up, we'll talk about the power plants of those kitchen factories, your mitochondria, and why they might be the real ticking clock of aging. Imagine your body is a bustling city, and every single building, your cells, needs a reliable power grid to keep the lights on, the machines running, and everything in order. That's what mitochondria are, the tiny power plants inside each cell. But mitochondria aren't just simple generators churning out energy in the form of ATP, the cell's fuel. They're like smart control centers that manage a bunch of critical jobs, producing energy for everything the cell does, triggering programmed cell death, called apoptosis, when a cell is too damaged to fix, kind of like a safe demolition crew, handling calcium signaling, which is like the cell's texting system for quick communication, controlling inflammatory activation, deciding when to sound the alarm for immune help, maintaining redox balance, keeping the chemical environment stable, not too oxidized or reduced, even guiding stem cell maintenance and differentiation, helping repair crews know what kind of new cells to build. As we get older, these power plants start breaking down in a few key ways. First, the mitochondrial DNA, mLT-DNA, a small circular instruction manual sitting right inside the power plant with almost no protection, gets hit hard by damage. It's located next to the busy electron transport chain, the main assembly line for energy, so it picks up mutations faster than the DNA in the cell's main control room, the nucleus. Second, that electron transport chain gets sloppy and leaky. Electrons jump out too early, creating too many reactive oxygen species. Think of them as toxic exhaust fumes from a faulty engine. A little ROS is actually useful. It's like a mild stress signal that tells the body to adapt and get stronger, similar to how exercise produces some to build muscle. But chronic high levels are overwhelming. They rust away fats, lipids, scramble proteins, and nick DNA while messing up normal cell signals. Third, the balance between NAD+ and NADH, more on this in the next segment, tips the wrong way, slowing down important chemical reactions. Fourth, the cleanup crew fails. Mitophagy is the process where damaged mitochondria are tagged and recycled like selective garbage pickup. It's run by watchdog proteins like PINK1 and Parkin, which get less effective with age. The big problem? Cells don't just shut off cleanly. Instead, they turn into energy-starved, grumpy zombie cells, chronically inflamed and leaking harmful signals that infect neighboring cells, spreading the chaos. Here's the key idea to remember. When mitochondria lose efficiency, cells don't die, they malfunction. This malfunctioning state, sometimes called zombie cells or mitochondrial dysfunction-induced senescence, is a bigger driver of whole body aging than simple cell death. That's why things that boost mitochondrial health have such wide-reaching anti-aging benefits. Restoring NAD+, using mitophagy enhancers like urolithin A found in pomegranates and some supplements, regular exercise, or caloric restriction, mimetics lifestyle, or drugs that mimic the effects of eating less. Mitochondria aren't just one piece of the aging puzzle, they're arguably the master regulator keeping the whole system running smoothly.
Now let's zoom in on NAD+, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Think of it as the cell's universal battery pack or currency that powers hundreds of essential reactions. It flips between a charged form, NAD+, and a used form, NADH, like a rechargeable battery. NAD+ is absolutely required for PARP enzymes, the emergency DNA repair crews that fix breaks from daily wear and tear. Sirtuins, a family of 7 longevity proteins that act like wise overseers. They quiet noisy genes, repair DNA, build new mitochondria, mitochondrial biogenesis, and ramp up stress resistance. CD38 and other immune-related enzymes that gobble up NAD+ during inflammation. Starting around age 30-40, NAD+ levels begin dropping steadily, often cut in half or more by your 60s or 70s. This decline speeds up because of chronic low-grade inflammation, which revs up CD38 and burns through NAD+, overworked PARPs trying to keep up with piling DNA damage, lifestyle issues like obesity or diabetes that throw metabolism out of whack. The fallout is a domino effect: poor DNA repair, silenced longevity-promoting genes, weaker mitochondria, and more zombie-like senescent cells. That's why boosting NAD+ has become a cornerstone of modern longevity strategies. The most common ways to replenish it use precursors, building blocks the body converts into NAD+, nicotinamide mononucleotide, NMN, nicotinamide riboside, NR, plain niacin or nicotinamide, cheaper but less efficient. Delivery matters. Direct subcutaneous injections or IV NAD+ give a fast, high spike. Oral precursors are convenient, but get partially broken down in the liver, first pass metabolism. One important side note: high doses of precursors can drain your supply of methyl groups, tiny chemical tags needed for other processes. So many people add trimethylglycine, TMG, or other methyl donors to keep everything balanced. Early human trials show NAD+ restoration can improve insulin sensitivity, blood vessel health, and even reset some epigenetic markers toward a younger state. It's not magic on its own, but it's a vital lever in a whole systems approach to slowing aging.
We're now continuing our deep dive into the science of longevity, and right now we're talking about one of the most exciting and honestly most misunderstood tools out there: peptides. If you've heard the word peptides floating around in wellness circles and thought it sounded like overhyped bro science, hang with me for a minute. When you understand what they actually do, they're one of the most elegant and powerful approaches in modern longevity medicine. Let's start with a simple reframing. Peptides don't force your cells to do anything unnatural. They don't hijack the system. Instead, they gently remind cells how to act the way they did when you were younger, when repair, recovery, and balance happened effortlessly. So what are peptides exactly? They're short chains of amino acids, usually between 2 and 50 amino acids long. Think of amino acids as the Lego bricks that build proteins. Because peptides are so short, they're small, precise, and fast-acting. Their job? They work as highly specific signaling molecules. They travel to a cell, bind to a cell surface receptor with incredible accuracy like a key fitting perfectly into its lock, and then trigger an intracellular cascade of events that changes gene expression in exactly the right way for the situation. It's targeted, contextual, and natural. Here are 2 big differences that clear up a lot of confusion. First, peptides are not hormones. Hormones, like insulin or growth hormone, flood the entire bloodstream with a broad message. If those levels stay artificially high for too long, cells stop listening. That's the resistance you hear about with chronic elevation. Second, peptides are not typical drugs. Most drugs block pathways like slamming a door shut. Peptides do the opposite. They restore or amplify the body's own physiological pathways. Let's look at some real-world examples of clinically relevant peptides that are actually being used today. BPC 157 and TB 500. These act like an elite damage control team. They speed up tissue repair, promote angiogenesis, the growth of new blood vessels, and turn on anti-inflammatory pathways to quiet excessive inflammation. Thymosin alpha-1. This one helps recalibrate the immune system. It's particularly valuable for chronic infections or when immunity starts to decline with age, what we call immune senescence. GH secretagogues such as CJC 1295, ipamorelin, and tesamorelin. Instead of injecting growth hormone from the outside, that's exogenous GH, and it carries risks, these peptides gently stimulate your own pituitary gland to release growth hormone in natural, youthful pulses. The result? Better muscle maintenance, improved fat metabolism, and faster recovery. Cerebral peptides like CMAX and Selank. These support the brain by enhancing neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to adapt and rewire. Boosting BDNF expression. BDNF is like brain fertilizer and increasing resilience to stress. Why are peptides so effective for aging? Because one of the core hallmarks of aging is the loss of intercellular communication. Over time, the natural conversations between cells carried by growth factors, cytokines, and repair signals get weaker and quieter. Those critical messages fade. Peptides step in and restore those missing or diminished conversations. They turn the volume back up on signals your body was designed to use all along. And here's something important. Peptides often work best in multi-peptide protocols, thoughtfully designed combinations, tailored to an individual's specific biology, blood work, and goals. They're not a magic bullet, but when used correctly, peptides are like sending precise, youthful reminder notes to every cell in your body. Hey, remember how we used to do this? Let's get back to it. In the next segment, we'll start pulling all these threads together into a practical, step-by-step longevity strategy you can actually use. Stick around, you won't want to miss it.
Okay, everyone, let's take a step back and pull all of this together. We've covered a lot of ground: epigenetics, mitochondria, NAD+, peptides, but now it's time to see the big picture. Here's the most important mindset shift in modern longevity thinking. Aging is not a single disease with one root cause. It's not like catching a virus or developing diabetes where you can point to one clear enemy and attack it. Instead, aging is a systems level failure. It's like an entire city gradually falling apart because multiple critical infrastructures start breaking down at the same time. We see three major categories of breakdown. First, loss of information integrity. That's the epigenetic drift we talked about. Your gene control switch is getting scrambled, plus increasing transcriptional noise, where cells start misreading their own instruction manuals and producing the wrong proteins at the wrong times. Second, loss of energy efficiency. This is the mitochondrial dysfunction and the steady drop in NAD+ levels that leave your cellular power plants running on fumes, producing less energy and more damage. Third, loss of repair and quality control. Your DNA repair crews slow down. Proteostasis, the system that keeps proteins properly folded and recycled, gets overwhelmed, and mitophagy, the selective cleanup of damaged mitochondria, starts failing. When you look at it this way, it's easy to see why single intervention approaches almost always disappoint. Taking one vitamin here, popping a trendy supplement there, it might help a tiny bit, but it rarely moves the needle in a meaningful, lasting way. Even powerful single drugs like rapamycin or metformin, which target specific aging pathways, can give you a boost. But they tend to plateau pretty quickly because they're only fixing one small part of a much bigger interconnected problem. What actually works is a multi-layered, systems-based approach, hitting the problem from several angles at once, supporting the whole network instead of just patching one leak. That means optimizing NAD+ and overall redox balance to recharge cellular energy, supporting mitochondrial health and biogenesis, building fresh, efficient power plants, influencing epigenetic regulation through smart lifestyle choices and targeted compounds, restoring proper cell-to-cell signaling with peptides, reducing chronic inflammatory load across the body, enhancing the clearance of senescent cells, those dysfunctional zombie cells that spread trouble. This isn't random supplement stacking. This is systems biology translated into real-world clinical practice, the core of what modern longevity medicine is all about. Think of it like maintaining a high-performance car. You don't just change the oil and call it good. You tune the engine, balance the tires, upgrade the fuel system, keep the electronics calibrated, and clear out any rust, all at the same time. Do that consistently, and the car runs like new for far longer. Your body is the ultimate high-performance machine. Treat aging as the system's failure it truly is, and you give yourself the best shot at staying strong, sharp, and energetic deep into later life. Host. In our final segment coming up, we'll turn all this science into a practical step-by-step roadmap you can actually start using today. No overwhelm, just clear priorities and realistic actions. You're not going to want to miss it. As we wrap up this episode, I want to leave you with a clear, grounded perspective on what we're really doing here. We're not chasing immortality. We're not trying to live forever or defy nature in some unrealistic way. What we're after is far more achievable and far more meaningful. We're working to extend the years you spend feeling truly alive, strong, energetic, sharp, and healthy. The goal is to keep youthful cellular function going as long as possible, so that any decline, when it finally comes, is compressed into a short period at the very end, rather than dragging on through decades of slow, frustrating loss. In other words, we want more years of vitality and far fewer years of frailty. The good news? The science is no longer speculative. Aging isn't some mysterious, inevitable curse. It's driven by identifiable, interconnected mechanisms, things like epigenetic drift, mitochondrial decline, loss of repair systems, and breakdown in cell communication. We've spent this whole episode walking through them, and here's what's truly exciting. For the first time in human history, we have real tools rooted in solid molecular biology to intervene in those mechanisms in meaningful ways. We're not just hoping lifestyle changes will add a few years. We're using precise, evidence-based strategies to support the body's own youth-preserving systems. In the episodes ahead, we're going to go deeper and more practical. We'll cover things like how to accurately measure your biological age, not just how many candles are on your birthday cake, why chronic inflammation sits upstream of almost every major age-related disease, the cutting-edge future of regenerative medicine, advanced peptide protocols, and truly personalized longevity strategies. So if you're ready to move from passive aging to proactive health, you're in the right place. Thank you for joining me today. If anything we talked about shifted the way you think about getting older, if it sparked even a little hope or curiosity, please share this episode with someone you care about, a friend, a parent, a partner. These ideas spread best through real conversations. This is Dr. Ethan Hausman-Marquis, signing off from the Science of Ageless Living. Until next time, stay curious, stay proactive, and do everything you can to keep your cells young. Ooh.